I'm Dad's Place, Todd Friedman, just so you know who I am.
Hey, there you are, Todd. How you doing?
Good. How's it going, Joseph?
Hey, I'm doing pretty good. This is great to finally match a face to the messages we've been swapping back and forth.
Yes, yes.
Good.
We, we were we were swapping on Letterbox, right?
That's right. We were swapping on Letterboxd and then eventually here. And yeah, I can't wait to get into that because I rewatched the film because I think my first impression of the film, some of it went over my head. I had to watch it again.
It's definitely been like a polarizing response, it's been interesting.
Yeah,
And I don't know if I did the right, I mean, well, I obviously did the right thing by meeting you, but
sure.
sometimes I wonder if I did the right thing by going on Letterboxd and responding to some of these comments. I haven't done it in a while. I actually got suspended from Letterboxd for doing it because they thought I was like trying to like sell some. It was really weird. So this was my first kind of foray into doing that for one of my films, and it was definitely an interesting experience. To say the least.
Yeah, oh, there he is. Hey, Daniel. How's it going?
Just
Good.
closed my door.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I was just gonna say, engaging with viewers of your material, I think it's great. Years ago, I had an experience where I got onto IMDb used to have message boards.
Oh,
You could,
old school. Yeah.
yeah, old school. And I used to get on those and go back and forth with people. And there was a movie coming out called Anonymous, and it was made by, of all people, that disaster movie pornographer, um, Roland Emmerich. You know, he always
Yep.
shows
Yeah.
everything.
hmm
And he had made completely out of his wheelhouse. He decides to take on the Shakespeare authorship question. And so he makes Anonymous that says Shakespeare didn't write his plays. And I was on a chat board going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth with one of these guys. He kept coming. I mean, he just wouldn't back down from any evidence. And then eventually I started private messaging him, and it turns out he was the screenwriter of the film. And I'm like, wait a minute, John Orloff, the guy that wrote Band of Brothers, the guy that just did the Apple series about the aviators in World War One. It's
Yeah.
just like, really? And so he and I ended up having a nice back and forth. And when he went to press junkets, he said that my responses helped him take on all these academics. And I don't know, it's a very funny story. But going
That's
back,
awesome.
yeah, going back to what you were saying, Todd, is I think engaging directly with your viewers, I think that's a great way to just, raise awareness, but also find out where the pulse is, what people are looking for.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think if you do it in an appropriate way, like, when I first started making films and I came out with like my film Molly Singer for back in like 3 or 4 years ago,
Yeah.
some of these comments, and I wrote that, some of these comments, and I was a lot younger in the industry, and some of these comments like really, kind of pissed me off. So I was responding, and then people were feeding off of that, and it turned into this whole mess. And I definitely learned some lessons because of that, thick skin.
The thing is that the thing that's most interesting about this industry in general, or like art in general, we should just say art, because it's
Sure.
like anything that you do, if you spark any kind of response, then you succeeded, because art is so, as we know, art is so subjective, and it's not only subjective in what you like or what somebody likes, it's subjective where you are at that point in your life or what's going on in that day. And like, I could listen to a song and hate it because I'm having a shitty day at work or whatever. And the next day I listen to it and I'm in a great mood. I'm like, oh, fuck, I completely misjudged this. And it's just it's hard to talk to somebody about that, or debate with somebody about that, because you know what I mean? And it's just, yeah, it's crazy.
You know, we and this is one of those podcasts where we're in medias res. We're just right in the middle of a conversation, and sometimes I like when a podcast begins. I usually have like a brief preamble. Hey, everybody, I got special guests, And you know what? For our listeners, we're going raw. We're just going to go raw. And a conversation has been happening. And I just want to, if nothing else, before we completely get into why my guests are here and why I'm so excited to have them, I'd like to introduce Todd M. Friedman, who is an actor, but primarily a producer of films. And if I don't have all your titles, Todd, I apologize. This is really but I have got Todd here, and Todd is here with the director of 2025's Marshmallow, which I believe was filmed in 2023. And I am just so excited to have the producer and the director, Daniel. Am I going to say this right? DelPurgatorio?
That's correct. Yeah.
Wow, that is very. That is very. What would you say? That's very.
Badass.
It's very badass. I made a reference of it in my review.
You're not the only one.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I said, whatever you are expecting from director Daniel DelPurgatorio, whose surname appears to match the tone of the film, you will be wrong.
It's funny. Todd will send like a text every so often, and it'll be a review that somebody will just comment on my last name. And still, like it's funny. I was joking with Todd. I was like, people that I know or have known for a while or I've worked with for a while, like will say, "Hey, so what's your real last name?" That's DelPurgatorio. That's my last name.
I went to college. I went to grad school in England with a gal, and her last name was Violante, and I'm like, that's your last name literally is violence. I mean,
Yeah.
so I
Perfect.
just
Yeah.
that I mean, I love the Italian culture, but every now and then I'll get an Italian name, and I'm like, oh boy, that is
Yeah.
just beautiful. Well, this is the Fixate and Binge podcast. This is a weekly podcast. I invite guests from around the world to discuss movies and television. And when I don't have guests from around the world to talk about movies and television, I give you my takes and my perspectives on what I think is worth your time, because time is limited and there's just so much content to choose from. I am extremely excited to welcome my two guests to the Fixate and Binge podcast, because we have got a wonderful, exciting, incredible film to discuss, and that is 2025's Marshmallow. And you can rent that. It's on video on demand on Amazon Prime right now. In fact, it's discounted. For those of you who are counting pennies and pinching, it was $2.99. I watched this again last night with my wife and my daughter. Daniel or Todd, I am just interested to get into this. Where did this story come from? I know your screenwriter is a guy named Andy Gryzkowiak, but I mean, who got attached to the project first? Was it you, Todd, or you, Daniel?
I'll let Danny talk about it, the history of it.
Okay.
Yeah. So Andy was working with our other producer, Warner, on a project called Black Friday. And that was during the pandemic, right? So it was like right when they were able to secure pandemic, the whatever you do when you could get a certain amount of people, blah, blah, blah. So everyone was sort of like shooting this film, and they were separated. And, so everybody that was on set at the time was kind of living in their own little wings of this facility. And I think Andy had an idea for Marshmallow, which wasn't called Marshmallow at the time, and he pitched it to Warner, and he's like, "Hey, I got this idea. I want to do a summer camp horror film, but from the kids' perspective, where the whole thing is about kids that are facing the bad guy, so to speak." And Warner's like, "I love it. Pitch me something, and we'll go from there." So he wrote something which was a lot of stuff that he could relate to, or was relatable in his life, or things that he went through. Warner loved it, and then he brought that, I believe, to Todd. And then both Todd and Warner came to me and said, "Hey, we have this project, would you be interested in taking a look?" And I read it, and then I loved it for two reasons. One, for being, it just felt like a film that I would have loved when I was a kid. And then for the other side of it, like being a father and having kids now myself, like half of the film I could relate to very emotionally. So I like the idea of bringing two different things to it, right? Where I was like, oh, this really kind of opens the door for all different types of people to want to, you know, dive into this mystery, so to speak. So yeah.
Wow. That's perfectly explained. I appreciate that. Todd, what was your thoughts when you first got a hold of this script? What was your thoughts?
I read the script and, I was blown away, especially, by the twist.
Yeah.
And, I just related so much to it. And, this is our first horror movie, if you want to, for Hemlock. And we specialize in sort of like cutting edge type of movies. And like, if we're going to get in the horror space, like this is the perfect opportunity for us to do that. Cause I just really felt like the script blew me away.
Yeah, I mean, if I can, I mean, for anyone listening to this, we're going to spoil the hell out of it. Okay, so if you haven't watched it yet, and you want to, and by the way, you should, because I I'm going to put Marshmallow in my top 5 horror films I've seen all year. And if you listen to this podcast enough, I watch quite a lot of horror. A lot of indie horror as well, because I'm always interested to see what people will do with limited budgets, limited resources, and sometimes limited star power. You know, I still am interested in a story. And so, I mean, I put Marshmallow up there, and pardon me for just kind of being very serendipitous about this, guys, but I put it up there with Bring Her Back. I put it up there with Weapons. I put it up there with all of these wonderful, great 28 years later. This is one of the best horror films I've seen. And the my criteria for a horror is it formulaic? Is it predictable? And would I watch it more than once? And the answer is no, no, and yes. It is not formulaic. It is not predictable. And I absolutely will watch it more than once. And that's what I did with Marshmallow. I watched it with my wife and my daughter, and my wife is a psychologist and a social worker and has all these degrees, and she loves watching true crime shows and listens to podcasts. And I'm sure that if I end up dead, she's probably the one who did it. So,
Amen, brother.
Yeah, amen. And she is one of these. She can sometimes be one of those frustrating people to go to the movies with, because she's like, I had it figured out within the first 5 minutes. I knew the way it was going to end. And this film that we watched last night, it got done. I looked over to her and I said, "What did you think?" She goes, I can't believe I didn't know where it was going until like the last 5 minutes of the movie. And even the last 5 minutes, I was like, what in the heck? So she said, tell them when you talk to them on your podcast, tell them I loved their film. It surprised me, and it was never boring and never predictable at any point.
Thank you.
And
That's
my
amazing.
yeah, and my wife is hard to pull a review out like that. So
Amazing. Thank you so much. Yeah, we
Yeah, that means a lot
appreciate that.
for sure.
Yeah.
now, when I watched this film, this is when Todd and I first interacted. Do you go by Daniel or Danny, or what's the best?
Whatever feels right for you.
Okay, and
Yeah.
same with me. You can call
Yeah.
me Joe or Joseph. I'll mostly go by Joe, but
Yeah.
I'll answer to whatever. When I first watched the film, I watched it only because I had followed some TikTokers as a content creator, and they were raving about it. So I went in probably with some extra expectations, and I watched it. And I thought that was interesting. It was definitely different, and I felt like I needed to watch it again. Nevertheless, I wrote my review based on that single viewing, and then when I watched it again this weekend, I'm like, I missed so much, so many brilliant things. Like the devil really was in the details of this film. There were things I loved that I never identified in my review, which wasn't fair. The cinematography, the setting, the cast, the kids in this feel authentic, feel real. The camp setting, whoever wrote this, Andy who wrote this, he must have gone to camp as a kid, because this feels like a lived experience. I don't know if either one of
Yeah.
you can speak to that.
Yeah, he definitely went to camp, and it's really funny actually, because after we finished filming the movie, I drove back home, and like 3 days later, I took my kids and dropped them off at summer camp. And I was so critical of going there because I was looking at everything, just having spent, a bunch of time making this movie. And I'm like, fuck, we got it all right. Like that's everything that is here is what we did. But yeah, it was a lived-in experience for sure. And part of what was interesting about the film, which I was going to ask you on your second view, how
Yeah.
much more things clicked and how much other stuff did you see? But there was we really leaned into a lot of tropes and things that are familiar for a reason, right? Because, spoiler territory, but like these people, they set up a Disney World essentially, right? It's like,
Right.
hey, we're making something that has to live by rules, the rules that kids and parents are familiar with, right? And if we don't, then the Disney World doesn't work. You know what I mean? And
Right.
so it was really important that the stuff that everybody knows and has seen, like the jockey counselor and the shy counselor and the like, all of that stuff is very specific for a very specific reason. And then also comes around at the end to make sense. And if we didn't have all of that stuff in there, the payoff wouldn't have worked. You know what I mean? So
Right.
yeah. Yeah, so it was cool that Andy was able to sort of like pull all of this stuff from growing up. Like he had a grandfather that he was really close with that passed away and that he felt emotionally. He went to camp, he was picked on. He had all of these things that sort of like all gel together. And it was funny because when, Todd, myself, and Warner and Andy were all together for the premiere of the film, we were talking about it. And I think Andy was even finding stuff in the film that he wrote now, like before he was watching it, that he's like, shit, that's from my life too. Like, I didn't even think of that. Like, he did stuff like subliminally, which was
Sure.
really cool. Yeah.
Holy cow. That's brilliant. Todd, can you tell me anything about the casting? Were you directly involved? I mean, other than the fact that I recognized you right away as the dad,
Yeah.
which was kind of wild. I was like, hey, wait a minute. I think that's the guy that's going to be on the podcast. Can you tell me anything about the casting? By the way, I'm a big Corbin Burnson fan, all the way from LA Law. That dates me a little bit.
Well, I'm
So,
from Cleveland, so I'm a
oh,
huge Indians fan. So obviously, Major League is just
Major
like.
League.
So
right.
once we got Corbin, and obviously my parents were huge in LA. It was just like I was like done, right? Um, but from we'll start with the kids.
Yeah.
We got so extremely lucky. The only person who actually hadn't really had any major acting credits for the kids was my son Dylan, who played Sam. He's the kid who's like, "What the fuck?" Yeah. But the rest, like Q and Kai, I mean, and all these kids had just come off of pretty big roles, and they're all really up and coming actors. And then once these kids got together, they were literally best friends since day one, and still are in like these group chats. And so we got really lucky with the kids for sure. And I'll let Daniel speak to more about directing those kids, because everyone says that directing kids is hard, but he certainly made it look easy. From the older cast, getting someone like Georgia Wiggum,
Mm,
who we knew was pretty close to blowing up a bit because Ted was coming out, and loved
right.
Ted on Peacock. To Alyssa Reiner from Orange is the New Black. So we definitely had a bunch of you know really good actors and actresses for frankly for the budget. So we got really lucky in that regard.
Yeah, I think
Wow.
too, what's interesting is like all the way from the kids to the adult, like to the adult roles, like everybody like played themselves to some extent or related to it. Like Georgia, like we did casting and she like did the scene where she was telling the campfire story. And like halfway through, I'm like, hey, I'm like, this is like fucking so weird, like how good and natural this is. She goes, well, I used to be a camp counselor. I'm like, okay, well, that totally makes sense. And same thing with the kids, like
Yeah.
He's very introverted. And so he related to the character and also had a near drowning experience when he was younger. So he had this sort of like element to him. And Sam, or Dylan, who played Sam, like played himself, which was great. And like, so we tried to make sure that like the character types were in the script, but we wanted to like, we were casting people that like really felt like they were that role. And it was very natural. Like I would say to everybody like, hey, this is what the dialogue needs to get across, but like, how would you say it? Like, I would say this, or I would say, what the fuck? Or you know what I mean? And it was very natural to how the kids would act. And we leaned into that a lot and wanted them to feel like adults. Like when parents aren't around, it's a whole different ball game. We know that as kids,
And I definitely would remiss if we didn't bring up Max Malice, who played Doink, Dirk.
Yeah.
I mean,
was about
if you
to
look
say
at some
him.
of these,
Yeah.
if you, the three crazy comments we'll get about the film, other than like the quality of the movie, would be Daniel's last name, Q's haircut, and the fact that everyone loves Doink. You know what I mean? Like he really played that role, and people really fell in love with his character. It's
very cool. Yeah.
I would completely agree. I think that's one of the great charms about your film is the last time I can remember. I mean, I'm thinking all the way back to great examples in movies or television series where a younger cast of lots of kids, it can be Bad News Bears, it can be The Goonies, it can be Stranger Things, it can be Super 8, which I really loved.
Yep.
And E.T. and Marshmallow and this is so those kids. I mean, writing for those kids and balancing. I mean, that's the genius of the writing. I think this really goes to Andy's talents is writing for kids and adults, and that contrast. I don't know. The casting was just spot on, and the screenplay was fantastic, and I don't know. I'm just full of praise here, guys. I don't know if I had kind of a muted response when I first saw it, and then I watched it again, and I'm like, oh, okay. I'm seeing a lot of things. I love the cinematography. I love the night shoots. I love the kind of foggy effect in the background, which I think tonally matches the theme of the film, that certain things are not quite in focus, that there is mystery beyond the background, that there are some things that are kind of not put together. And I don't know. I mean, can you tell me a little bit about what it was like for the setting, for your choice of lighting and tone, and what you were going for?
Yeah, I think, the big thing was that it needed to feel like it was from a kid's perspective, right? The kids, like, they were the anchor of the entire film. Everything else was in support of it. And by saying that, I'm not diminishing any of our older talent at all. It was, this was a kid's story first and foremost, and everything else is sort of glued together by what's around it. So we wanted to, it's funny that you said that about like the lensing. Like we chose lenses that we knew would have they would fall off really fast, because when you're a kid, you see what's in front of you and everything else is a blur, right? And you're not focusing on anything else, and like you react and make decisions faster than you talk faster than your mind can process stuff, right? And so that was the look that we wanted to go for in the film. It was like everything that's immediately there is in focus, and everything else, there's a whole big world back there, but you're not really looking at it unless you walk back there and it gets into focus, right? So that was kind of the intention when we were shooting the kids stuff, and a lot of the kids' perspective. When we got to the adults, the lensing widened up a bit more, and stuff like opened up a bit where appropriate. As we went, it started, everything started open, and then it closed, like lighting all closed down. The nightmare sequences, the way we wanted to shoot that was, again, like worlds that when you dream, as you know, everything is very detailed right by you, and the world sort of dissipates away and you don't know anything else about that. So that's why we built our sets specifically to have a lot of detail in the center, and it to have less detail as it expands beyond the frame.
Filming that nightmare scene was really, really fun. Like, they built this little set in the middle of the summer camp in some like warehouse, and like just got in there and just it was amazing.
And flooded it too. I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah. They
that
built a huge tank and built a set underwater, and we had water shooting or pouring from above. Yeah, and it's funny when you think about that, like our little independent movie, like that was a feat in itself of like, how do we, build this to hold a shit ton of water? And then how do we make it rain, and how is it going to be safe? And it was like so much stuff, to figure out. And our production designer Lexi and the entire crew were just like up for the challenge, and came every time that an idea would come up, whether it was mine or one of theirs, it just expanded, and it was awesome.
thank you. I appreciate that, because I like what you said earlier about when we dream, we're focused on what's in front of us. And I think that's absolutely right. There seems to be everything in peripheral is very foggy, because the dream is taking us somewhere very specific. Our brain is taking us to something very specific, be it an image or a mood. And that's one of the things I liked about your film, is that it it was just so cleverly done. And the thing I really, really was surprised by, of course, is that twist. And again, if you're listening to this, we're going to spoil it, because it's got one hell of a twist. It's got one hell of a twist. I mean, it's right up there with a Shyamalan Sixth Sense twist, which you don't see coming. And I think the problem that I had on the first visit watching your film was that I got distracted thinking of the twist. Like when the twist came, it turned the film upside down for me. And then I got distracted thinking of, well, how does this work? Wait a minute. Okay, wait a minute. That interaction with this character. Oh, wait a minute. So then I started trying to make these, synaptic connections of, I've seen things. Was that metaphorical, or is that literal, or is this illusory? Is this real? And that's why this film really came together for me when I watched it again. Then I'm like, much more clearer. I don't know if you're getting that kind of response from people who are reviewing it, or
So for someone with OCD like me, who's probably read every single review, obviously,
okay.
because that's just kind of the nut job I am. I feel like there was a lot of that. I think people were either just blown away by the twist and like loved it so much, or people either need to go back and be like, wait, what did I just watch? Or the people are actually, some people are like, that kind of lost me, because now I want to like see more, and like then the movie kind of ends. So like, horror crowds, it's the smartest crowd. It is the most loyal crowd, but it's also the toughest crowd, and it's certain people kind of went into it with certain expectations, especially if you're like the true blood slasher, thinking you're going to go in to see something like that. You don't get that, so they're going to let you know how they feel, and you have to respect that.
Right.
Yeah, and that was what was exciting to me. It was like, we've all seen every type of movie, every genre there is, right? And so, and you mentioned this, Joe, you mentioned this earlier, talking about like independent films and how people do things different. Like, we said, hey, let's take a swing. Like we don't have anybody that's going to tell us no. And so we said right at the beginning, we're like, this is going to split people right down the center, because people are going to go in and say, oh, Jason wasn't there cutting, kids' heads off. And they're going to be upset about that. And there are going to be people that were expecting that were surprised, and they like it because of that. And that's what we wanted to do. We're like, hey, we're telling a specific story. We're taking a swing, and we know it's going to start a conversation. And that's what's exciting about art. That's why you make art. Like, it's easy to make something that you think everybody's going to like, or try to make something you think everybody's going to like, but it's more fun to make something that's true to you, and that does and checks all the boxes off on your list, and see what comes from it. You know what I mean? And I think that's more rewarding. It's like for me personally,
No,
And that's why, right, Warner and I were so into making this movie as Hemlock's first horror, because we want to make movies like that, and we if we're going to come out as our first horror, we're going to come out swinging, and we're either, see what happens.
This is what I love so much about A24. Now, I'm not as familiar with Hemlock, but A24, even in films that might not work for me as a viewer, I'm like, at least they went there. They went for it. And I like that you guys both have referred to the metaphor of swinging because I referenced that. See, I updated my review a little bit. I said, concerning that twist, it's audacious, yes. And though it creates more questions than answers, um, but anyway, it was a small critique, but I said, but because the film swings for the fences instead of playing it safe or opting for a more formulaic ending, I tip my hat for the bold choices it makes. And
Yeah.
and when I think about it, I'm like, that's what I want in horror. Go
Yeah.
for it. I don't give me clown in a cornfield. That was sorry. Don't. I mean, if you're a Clown and Cornfield fan, or if you guys had anything to do with making of the Clown and Cornfield,
We didn't.
okay, thank goodness I'm not offending anyone. But like Clown in a Cornfield, it's like it's a little bit like when I worked at Blockbuster when I was in grad school, and I had a lady from England come in, and she picked the movie off the shelf and brought it to the counter. This is a true story, and the lady goes, "Right, what's this movie about then?" And I said, "Well, there's this." And with a straight face, I looked at her. I said, "Well, there's this plane, and there's these snakes, and the snakes get on the plane." She wasn't pleased with my sarcasm.
But to that point, I remember when that movie was coming out, and then they were going to change the movie, and didn't Samuel L. Jackson be like, "I signed on to this movie because it was called Snakes on a Plane, and you're going to change the name of it? Like, what the fuck?"
Yeah.
And so they put it back to that. Yeah, that's funny.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing I like. Exactly, that's so funny. It's that's the thing I like about your film is that the films that I've rated as the best horror films this year, they require me to watch them more than once, and that includes Weapons and Bring Her Back.
Yep.
And they all subverted my expectations. I was expecting it to go in one direction, and my neck snapped gruesomely.
Dying to watch Weapons. I'm dying to watch it.
Holy
I
saw
cannot
crap.
wait to watch it.
Yeah.
I'm so excited to watch it.
It's wow. Yeah.
Yeah.
You got to see it,
I
Dan?
did. I saw it on Friday night. Yeah.
Oh, geez.
Great.
And by the way, I'm not using hyperbole here when I say the excellence of your film belongs in the conversation with Weapons, with Bring Her Back, with 28 Years Later, as one of the best horror films released in 2025. And I do mean that.
Means a lot. Thank you so much.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it means a lot. You know, what's interesting is I always say this. It's when you go see a band play, right? You get
Mhm.
there, the band comes on, and you watch like the first song. You're like, "Fuck!" You're like super stoked, and you're in song 6, and then like song 8, and you're like so into it. And then like an hour and a half or 2 hours later, you're kind of just like waiting for it to end, and then it ends, and you leave.
Yeah.
Like when the band like stops on song 8, like you go to the merch booth, you buy shit, and then you talk about it the whole night, and you wish you could have saw more. That's what this film was to us, where it was like, we're gonna get to the end, we're gonna answer every question, and we're gonna leave some questions open. And it's the idea is supposed to be that people leave and talk about it and want to know more or want to see more. And we could have put more onto it, and we could have, and then the film ends and that's it, and then you close the book and then you move on. And it's like, I like the idea that we've made something that has sparked that conversation enough that people feel that they need to talk about it to their friends or post online to review wherever people do that, or and that's the point of why we do this, so
So
yeah.
good.
Yeah.
I was going to ask either one of you guys, were there any films? Obviously, this thing pulls a lot of tropes from Sleepaway Camp or the Friday the 13th movies. But were there any specific influences from other films that you were going for in your film that you can think of as a producer and as a director? I mean, was there anything that you can point to?
Early on, when I read the script, I personally like gravitated. I was like, oh, this felt Black Mirror-esque. Like, like I really like the Black Mirror and Twilight Zone. I thought that was like, it's relevant and current, yet it goes into a different territory. But it still feels real. So that's kind of where those came from. And then E.T. was a big inspiration for me. Which I know you mentioned E.T. earlier on, and it's one of my favorites, but that was definitely for the second half of it, that kind of otherworldly, ethereal, sort of like tone that we were going for, ET was a big inspiration for that. Yeah.
Anything that you can explain, Todd, about your experience as a producer working with the cast or the crew, or any crazy stories from making this film?
Nobody slept, you know. I mean, I think what was cool about it is that like we were making a film about summer camp, and to most of us, cast, crew, everyone from catering to, you know, grips, we were all in summer camp together. Like we were all experiencing it together. Um, and we got to like experience the summer camp. This was like a summer camp that, you know, wasn't even a camp anymore. It was like a closed summer camp in Carrollton, Kentucky. And just, you know, the kids were all best friends with like the crew, and just everyone just made like memories like a summer camp. Like the crew were like the counselors, and the producers were like the, I guess, the camp directors or whatever. Or Danny was the camp director actually.
Okay.
And, you know, and I was just along for the ride, just watching him work his magic. I think it really takes, you know, kids aren't easy, you know, so as fathers, you know, I think it takes, especially kids who are like 12, 13, 14, even though they're pros,
Yeah.
you know, it's a bunch of energy, bunch of hormones, and like these kids, like they were like nonstop. It's, you got to have a lot of patience, and you got to be able to relate to them. And I think, you know, Daniel was a perfect mix. He's the perfect director for this film.
That's great. Daniel, did your experiences as a dad, did you have to fall back on some of that?
Well, it's funny because I still, you know, feel and act like a 13-year-old, so I think I can relate on that level. Which, you know, when we first started casting, like we got
Mm,
on, like I got on calls with all of them, and we just talked and like, you know, talked about stuff, and I think that they felt comfortable with me. I met their parents on the calls before everybody showed up, and I wanted to make sure that they understood that like the kids were safe, and they were my number one priority, and like so we all like connected before, and I think it felt like Todd was saying, it felt very like family based, family oriented, where everybody was really comfortable with each other. And yeah, having kids, like I have three boys, and they're wild, you know, like wild, wild, wild. And they're different ages, so there's lots of different things. But yeah, you know, you kind of, there's the tricks that you know of how to deal with them. But again, they were all pros, so it was really just more of wrangling them and making sure that they felt comfortable, and the movie was their movie, right? And we just kept giving them and reminding them that like this is you. We didn't treat them like kids. We treated them like adults. You know, we not
sure.
only on camera but off camera, and I think that that helps them understand that, you know, like they had a lot of importance. They were important, you know, there, and they had a lot on their shoulders, and they wanted to prove everybody that they could do it, and they were just so good.
Yeah, it definitely comes across that way. There is such a cohesion with the cast. It just, everybody is, it's that Radiohead song, everybody in its right place, you know,
Yeah.
everything in its right place. It was so, it was perfect. I wanted to ask, what was the most challenging scene that you had to shoot for your film?
Most challenging. Well, a lot of the film was very physical. So there was a lot of physical stuff where some stunts and with the kids, like that's hard. So I think a general thing that was difficult was we only had a certain amount of time with the kids. They could only shoot for a certain amount of time,
Right.
and they were all wrapping up school, so that that time was even shorter. And in Kentucky, it got dark at like 9:30 at night. Like actually 9:30 and it was dark, but at 9:29 it was bright. And most days, Monday through Thursday, we could only shoot until 10 o'clock with the kids because of school. So, you know, half of our movie takes place at night. So we had a lot of every morning we would like talk about what we were shooting for the day, and we'd have to schedule it all out. And it was a lot of, okay, we're going to film this whole scene. It's a night scene in the morning, but we're only going to shoot this way, and we're going to black out the tent. Then we're going to go shoot all these scenes. Then we're going to come back and shoot the reverses where we see out the door, or they have to run out into the darkness. So there's a lot of like prep. And, you know, there were some times where we would have maybe 30 minutes before it got dark. So I would get the kids like running in woods for like 30 straight minutes to get them all out of breath and worked up. So when the camera started rolling, I can get my 2 or 3 takes, however long I had, and move on. So that was the toughest thing, was just going fast when we only had 30 minutes, you know?
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
And that means having, I mean, for our listeners, if you've never been on a film set before, you've got to have everything set up from the technical standpoint, your makeup, your sound, your lighting check, all of that, your stand-ins for the main cast, all of that. I say this because I've actually been in a couple films. I was I was in a film. It's not about me. It was a Chuck Norris film. It was really bad. It was in 1992. Sidekicks. It's terrible. It's just awful.
You're a sidekick.
I'm gonna
Yeah, I was in Sidekicks. I bullied Jonathan Brandis and
I got to get back and watch that now.
rest in peace.
Yeah.
Oh man, I was young. I was I wore a red hat with a green shirt, and I was best friends with the main bully in the film. And anyway, shooting with kids. I remember we shot that at a high school, and we would shoot into the night, and they would put artificial lighting outside of the gymnasium to simulate that it was daytime. But anyway, I know it's tricky. I know it's very hard. What I wanted to talk to you about, because my wife and I talked for about 45 minutes after this film last night. I finally had somebody I could talk to about it, which is what I wanted. I'm like, we have to watch this together now, because I watched it alone and I need to actually talk to somebody without spoiling it, and it must be seen. So I said, speaking of swinging for the fences, I said, some of this film reminds me a little bit of Blade Runner. And my wife's like, where are you getting that? And I said, well, hang on, because I'm a big Blade Runner fan. I said, hang on, so I'm going to go for it. I don't know if anyone's mentioned Blade Runner as a possible influence, but I thought the whole point of a Blade Runner kill unit was to take out Nexus 6 androids, which had human implants or human memory implants, but they were unpredictable. And because of that unpredictableness, they were a threat to modern society. So they had to be removed. And that is something at the end of this film with the phone call at the camp director, and I don't know, and then the very shocking final shot of the film with Pilar.
Yeah.
But my wife had an even better one. But yeah.
Sequel.
Sorry.
So I did have a Blade Runner stills in the look of this. So when we were referencing some style, which is cool, and then also the idea that the kids have implanted like true memories, but not the full thing, was important, so that they felt like they were living a normal life. Like they didn't want to like make a kid and they like, hey, I don't remember the first 9 years of my life. So it was important that like they implanted that background into them, right? Where they can remember a lot of stuff and alter some things slightly here and there, enough to give Morgan a fear of, him almost drowning in a pool.
Sure.
Right. Which, makes him to continue to grow up to be the kid that the parents know. Yes, very influenced and inspired by a lot of the Blade Runner mythology, for sure.
Wow. What did, I don't know. Have you heard that before, Todd? I mean, you've been reading some of these reviews. I don't know if you've come across that. I probably should have mentioned it in my review.
Tons of Goosebumps, tons of Black Mirror. I can't, like, you're kind of giving me deja vu, so I don't know. Like, but it's, I mean, it's like spot on.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it really is. I mean, that's like what these kids, I mean, God willing, there's a sequel, and, we set it up for it, we definitely have a lot of avenues to explore for that.
To that point, there was an article, Collider did a really great article where they broke down the film and referenced it to Black Mirror, but it was a lot of the Black Mirror episode was very similar to Blade Runner. It had a lot of Blade Runner vibes in there. So
right.
I don't think Blade Runner in that article came up, but it was interesting that they kind of like alluded to it.
My wife came up with, what I thought was a better example of what Marshmallow kind of reminded her of. And again, this is high praise.
Yeah.
Spielberg's AI.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
with the creation of the boy because
Yep.
of the family and the grief and losing a
Yep.
child and trying to process that. Um, and I thought, oh, that's actually quite brilliant. We could have
Yeah.
talked into the night about all the things in Marshmallow that reminded us of AI or Blade Runner, but mine was a harder sell. I think she was like, "Where are you getting that?" And then she says, "It reminded me of AI, where you have a child and they don't know that they're synthetic. They don't
You know,
know." Yeah,
it's interesting that we never talked about AI specifically, but I'm a huge Spielberg fan. And as I mentioned, like ET, like with Philippe, who shot the film, like we talked a lot about Spielberg
yeah,
in terms of like look and aesthetic and tone and all of that stuff. Um, but yeah, AI, I mean, AI is pretty damn spot on. And it's funny that that wasn't uh, in our conversation, but it is very relevant. Maybe it was a subliminal thing, you know?
yeah.
Yeah.
Or maybe some of the tropes and things explored in AI
Yeah.
were influenced by Blade Runner, since
Yeah.
the influence of that subliminally. So
Yeah.
there's a part in the podcast when I have film directors on or producers, I always say, "Well, what's next? Where do you go from here?" But you, I mean, are you guys? Is the door open to explore possibly going back to Andy and saying, "Hey, they may want a sequel"? I mean, is that being just discussed? Is that what's happening?
We're chatting.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
You,
There was a lot was written, as you know, for characters and for just like stuff that you don't see on the screen, so you know what the world is. Um,
Mhm.
and so after we finished the film, we all talked. Like we're still, Andy's very close with all of us, so we all talk regularly still.
Yeah.
And so we all talked about it, and then like after the film premiered, we were like, oh, we should definitely get into this. So yeah, there's
I
some.
mean, it's indie horror, right? So like
Yeah.
it's we don't have a studio making this, and we had a beg, borrow, and steal to get this first one. It came together serendipitously. So we're hoping that there's a plan for it, and obviously we definitely are pushing it as hard as we can because we think that this sets up a sequel perfectly.
Yep.
I would agree. In my amended review, I said literally the last two things I wrote were, can we have a sequel or a short series exploring more of the film's setting and concept? This film left me wanting more, and I'd love to see a follow up. So,
Yeah.
Netflix, are you listening? Any other streaming giants? Why not a full
Yeah.
series? Kind of like Paramount's From, where they
Oh yeah.
explore this kind of, you know, this world in which you're not quite sure what's real and what isn't. But this was certainly original, completely different. Um, I loved it, guys. I really did, and it holds up wonderfully to a second viewing. Much more to me made a lot more sense, and I was just glad to watch it with somebody and then to have such an interesting conversation, especially as a parent. And maybe I'm bringing my own bias. I'm a parent, and it's unconscionable to lose a child. One of my best friends in college, he lost a little sister in their swimming pool, toddler. It's horrible,
Awful, awful.
horrible. There were
Yeah.
8 kids in that family, and there were 7 boys and 1 girl, and she drowned in the pool, and it was just
It,
devastating.
it is so tough. And like I said earlier, the film is split in how you could relate to it. And everybody that we talk to that enjoys the film or enjoyed the experience of the film relates on a different way. And there is that sort of God complex. This movie like turns out it's like, oh, the bad guys aren't really bad guys. They're doing something good, but are they doing something good? Because it's not really good, but it's coming from a place of wanting to be good. And you're now questioning all of the decisions of everybody. You know what I mean? And it's like, who's the good guy? Who's the bad guy? What's the right thing? What's the wrong thing? Is there a right thing? Is there a wrong thing? Like, which is really fun because it's trying to change how we as people know the world works and how we operate and how we deal with grief and how we deal with loss and how we deal with loved ones and all of that stuff. And you're just asking more questions, and that's an answer you can't answer that. There's no way to answer that. You know what I mean? And I think
Right.
that's why it's like, what is life? Like you can't answer it,
No.
And that's what's, I think for me in horror films, that's the most interesting thing is people and people's decision. People are monsters, and what they do is the scariest stuff imaginable. And that's what makes a horror movie, not somebody getting his head cut off and blood, being sprayed against the wall. So yeah.
There's one more thing I want to talk to you about is the decision to let the kids have a knowledge of their origins. Sorry, for Pilar and Morgan to know their story, and that opens up a lot of interesting possibilities. I think it does.
Yeah.
There's a line in Blade Runner where Deckard says to Tyrell about Rachel after he gives her the Voight-Comp test. And I know this is very nerdy, but he says, how does she not know, or how does it not know what it is? And Tyrell says something to the effect, our motto is more human than human. And
Yeah.
I'm thinking about Morgan understanding what he is, that he doesn't, I mean, it's weird. It's like, is there a soul in there? Or
Yeah.
is it a sort of echo of who he once was? And he seems to be at peace with it. And of course, Pilar, if she's aware, I suspect that she also opted to know what's happening, is not at peace with it. And that's very Blade Runner-esque. Like when you realize you're synthetic and you have an expiration date, or you're not real, there can be some really catastrophic consequences from knowing that. I don't know. So many things to think about with that.
It's interesting too, like when you think about like kids growing up, right? And like as parents and teachers or whatever, like you're teaching kids by essentially not telling them certain things or not showing them certain things. Like you're trying to, block things off until they're a certain age where you could open that door, and you spend so much of life. And a lot of people spend so much of their life, like kids get gaslit, you know what I mean? They're
Right.
gaslighting kids, and it's not coming from a bad place, but it kind of is. So like we like this idea that like at the end, like this guy Franklin is like, well, I shouldn't be the one to not tell them, right? So
Right.
he opens the door for them, and maybe it was too soon for him to do that, because what can a 12-year-old's mind process? But like you said, is that it's not a real mind, so can they relate to it? So yeah,
Yeah.
it's interesting how
Wow. I would love to see a follow-up. I would love to see, you've got a lot there. You could make a series out of this. You really could. Man, I wish you guys the best of luck with it, because I think the story has legs and I think it would go somewhere. I would love to see a follow-up. I'm still thinking about the movie, and I'm a little bit kicking myself because I got distracted by that twist, by how, I'm telling you, I mean, that is like a machete to the head from Friday the 13th. You do not see it coming. And wham, it hits you. And I'm kind of stunned, so that I was a little bit distracted with what happened after that. And then I realized, what an idiot. I didn't watch closely enough, and I wasn't paying attention to some of the clues earlier in the film, and I kind of missed it. And so
if you hadn't, not to interrupt, but if you hadn't been distracted by the twist, then we might not be having this conversation. So I think it all works out for the best.
yeah, it's really
yeah,
interesting, and it's hard, like it's hard with films and reviews, because like a lot of times people will say like, oh, I'm not going to say anything, but they're, you're going in expecting something to happen, and that sets you off one way or another. You know what I mean? And I appreciate you not only watching the film once, but watching it twice. Like that is
For sure.
that's just amazing to us, and means the world that you watched it twice. That's 4 hours of your life almost that you dedicated to this film, and we really appreciate that. But yeah, it's Yeah, that's awesome. It really is awesome.
You're welcome. I tip my hat to both you guys. We're all wearing ball caps in this. I love your Nostromo hat. That's
I was,
perfect.
is that a Sunny? Is that
It
a
is
hat?
Patty's
Oh man,
Pub. My kids know
I
how much I love It's Sunny.
I
It's a Father's
fucking
Day gifts.
I
Love
love
it.
It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia so much. My wife, every time she comes in, she's like, "You're watching It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia for the 700th time."
I know.
I cannot stop watching it. I love it so much. Yeah.
I still can't believe how great Mac and Dennis are EMTs this season.
Oh,
It's the best.
I love this season. It's so unhinged
It's
and
good.
it's so wild like it used to be.
Yeah.
I mean, I sent a video to my wife where he's like, I just wanted to see if I could get you guys to jerk off a dog. And my wife was like, oh my God. And I did it. And I did it. And I was
I'm behind.
yeah.
Oh, that's all right. Just be careful what you cut into when you think it's a slice of cake. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah.
We'll leave that one
one.
there. My wife and I have loved It's Always Sunny. Her favorite episode, I think, is probably most people's episode. It's The Night Man Cometh.
Oh yeah, so
And
good.
I've got a T-shirt with The Night Man Cometh. And
Look, hold on, here you go. Wait. Can you see it over there? My Nightman Cometh poster.
oh no, are you serious?
Yeah.
That's hilarious. I've got I've got 2 T-shirts of The Night Man Cometh. I was in a mall outside of a Hot Topic, and I walked into a Hot Topic to get something for my kids, and the staff were going, oh, "We love your shirt. We love your shirt. Do we sell that shirt here?" And I'm like, "I don't know. My wife got it online. I don't know where you guys get it."
Danny's got everything back there.
Everything. Yeah.
He's got it.
Reference it.
If
I'm
you can
like, oh,
imagine
yeah,
it, if you reference it, he probably has it.
yeah.
Well, I was noticing for some of the work that you're producing, Todd, you did some producing work for a film with Sean William Scott in it. Is that right?
Yeah,
And
Bad Man comes out September 5th.
wow,
We're really excited about that one.
Country Mac,
Yeah.
Country
Yeah.
Mac from It's
Gonna
Always
be a-
Sunny.
Yeah.
It's gonna be a very cool dark comedy.
Oh, I can't wait to see it. I'm a big Sean William Scott fan,
Yeah,
so he's
great.
Great.
Yeah.
Great. Yeah.
Listen, guys, I have loved your energy. I have loved your story. Everything in this film came together so well. I can't recall or identify anything that I didn't think worked for me. It all worked. It was just such a great cohesive project. And for anyone who has a mild interest, not even a major interest, if you have a mild interest in horror, I urge you to find Marshmallow. It came out this year. It's on Amazon, video on demand. I rented it last night for the second time for $2.99. I don't even think it'll be the last time I watch it because I want to experience it with other people. Mostly because when you know there's a twist, you'll want to watch it with somebody else, and you just want to look over to them like I did with my wife last night. I go, "You didn't see that coming, did you?"
By the way, how old is your child that you watched it with? How old?
She's 16.
16.
Okay.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, and she's a big horror fan. I took her to see Barbarians with Zach Kreger's first film.
Yep.
She was with my wife and I when we went and saw Weapons on Friday night. She
Awesome.
loves horror, and my wife and I are big Charlie Brooker fans, so we love Black Mirror.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah, and I like the original Rod Serling Twilight Zone. It's just so genius.
I love it. I love it so much. Yeah.
Yeah. Looks like we lost
Oh.
brief. Oh, you're there.
Yeah.
A voice from beyond. From beyond. That's all right.
Transition into Twilight Zone.
That's it. That's it. Well, I want to express my thanks, my tremendous thanks for Daniel, your time, and for Todd, your time. You guys seem to work together like hand in glove. And I think that's wonderful. I have had a producer and a director on before, and that seems to be just the winning formula. If you've got your producer and your director on the same page, working collaboratively to support each other and support the project and support the vision, it just seems to me like that's the winning formula. Is there anything you guys want to say about your working relationship and what this experience was like for you two?
I'm just hopeful that and be lucky enough to be able to work with Danny again. I mean, obviously we've become very good friends, and we're definitely exploring other projects together. But I mean, privilege and honor to work with Danny. He's the best.
Yeah, same. I think, making art in general is hard, but it's really great when you get to do it with friends and people that you care for and respect. And there's a lot of trust that goes into doing this kind of thing. And I'm forever grateful to both Todd and Warner, other producer, for trusting me. And I had tons of trust in them. And I think, like you said, that makes it all worth it, so.
Brilliant. Thank you both. For our listeners, this is a wonderful film. Like I've said earlier, I've said it probably ad nauseum, but the point is you must see this film. And when you see it once, you're going to want to find a friend and you're going to want to watch it with them, because you will enjoy watching their experience when the surprises and the twists and the turns that this film takes happen. You're going to enjoy that. If you've made it all the way to the end of the podcast and haven't seen the film, sorry, we spoiled it for you. But for those of you that still want to see it, it's available video on demand. I rented it last night for $2.99. This is peak indie horror, Marshmallow. It's aptly titled. Everything is clicking and firing on all cylinders. The casting, the story, the concept, the setting. There is an authentic, genuine feel to this film that Daniel captures here in his film that I think you have to experience. I loved it. I'm going to continue to love it. And I can't thank you guys enough for giving up some of your time today to be a part of the Fixate Binge podcast. Thank you both so much.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks for having us. This is awesome.
Yeah. And I would love to have either one of you guys back, whatever you're involved in. If you're producing something else, Todd, and you want to kind of put the word out, I would love to have you or anyone else you're working with. And the same goes for you, Daniel. If there's any other work you're involved in, or if you have colleagues or anybody that would love to just have someone review their work or look at their work and discuss it. I'm passionate about movies. I'm passionate about the art and entertainment. And when it's done well, I get really excited, and I think my viewers get excited too. So I would love to be a part of whatever you guys have going on going forward.
Thank
Awesome.
you.
We're going to take you up on that for sure.
Oh,
Yeah,
I'd love it.
We'll bug you for sure.
Bug me, please. I have the time. For all of our listeners out there, we'll be back next week. I have another special guest. She's from England. She has written a book. It takes place during Prohibition America, and I actually binged all 5 seasons of Boardwalk Empire in preparation for her visit. So I'm committed, and I think you'll enjoy that podcast. That's coming out next week. But for all of us at the Fixate Binge podcast, be nice to yourself, be kind to others, love who you are, and we'll see you next week. Bye-bye.